My one thing that I'm interested in is people managing their emotional state. When a woman is trying to go forward, they need a community, they need some help. We don't always reach out, particularly those of us who are independent and want to make things. Having some momentary things you can do to bring relaxation in. So there's a relaxation technique, I think, in chapter 11. In chapter 10, there are a whole lot of strategies for people just to get a quick fix. But they belong in chapter 10 because it's a long journey until you get there. But I'm saying to people, if you really need something, read that first. You can go back. The book is really intended to be about the self. It's the intrapersonal community. If my one thing that I can do is help people find calm in the moment so that that mud in water emotion can settle and a person can live the strategy they've thought about beforehand and come back and find that reason in the moment. Also taking a breath before you're responding, often is very, very good. We have resilience, we can have hope.
Hi there, it's Amanda Stevens here. Look, I know we've all at some stage in the past read a book that's given us a new idea, changed our perspective on things, or even given us an aha moment about something going on in our lives. But very rarely does a book come along that not only changes your perspective on things, but gives you a whole new suite of skills that you can apply in virtually every area of your life and business. That book for me recently was this book, Your Emotional Edge, by my good friend and mentor, Noelene Dawes. Your Emotional Edge is basically a comprehensive yet very easy and fun guide to read, and it basically teaches you how to harness your feminine energy so that you can get what you want out of life. Recently, I was fortunate enough to interview Noelene about her new book in her beautiful garden at her home in Sydney, and the first question I asked her was about her role as an expert in emotional resilience and her motivation for writing the book.
I see my place as giving people the how-to. The women who are struggling now can't wait another 5 or 10 years for things to get better. And I just see that women also just do so much. So those of us who love to get things done will get things done, and no one will stop us doing those things. Give me something else to do, and I'll do it. And so therefore they don't often get to the stage where they get relief. And when they get into that, if they're getting what they want, it's okay sometimes, but they still get tired. And our decision-making skills and our energy, is really quite finite. Our will to do things is finite in comparison to our energy.
So and it has an impact on so many areas, and as you say, it creeps up on you, and it certainly has for me and for you, and probably for all the women listening to this interview. Why do you think it is a female trait that trying to do it all and taking more on? Because it is a female dominant trait, isn't it?
Yes, I think partly is the way, it's a bit about nature and nurture. I think the nature side of it is that stereotypically women tend to be always handling multitasks. Now there's a lot of research around the fact that multitasking doesn't really work anyway, but women tend to take it on. Men seem to be better in general at compartmentalising. When they go to work, they tend to leave what's happened at home. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying they don't stress or worry, but women just do it differently. We can semi-compartmentalise, it seems, but then there's, just give it one half a second and something else is coming in, like what are we going to have for dinner tonight? What about those finances we need to organise? What about that party, because I'm the only one that can organise, mum's party or whatever. And yet I've got this serious work to do. And there's all sorts of assumptions people make. And what I hear often in the corporate world is, that a woman's too emotional. So a man might be seen as too aggressive, but a woman's seen as too emotional. Now, sometimes by other women too. I've seen people come back to work and a female manager would say, well, her priorities have changed now, she's had a child. And I'm saying, be careful, that's not always the way. So there's all these assumptions people are making. And when a woman is trying to go forward, they need a community, they need some help. We don't always reach out, particularly those of us who are independent and want to make things happen. And so what happens is we have these huge expectations of what we're capable of, which is great, because we don't want to not have that. But somehow or other we get disappointed because we didn't achieve as much as we thought we could achieve in given time. Then we get all the external pressures coming on, and also we're frustrated by the support we thought we'd get, and then we get overwhelmed by the incredible burden that weighs down on our spirit. So I just said someone has to do something. And I just think that I want to give people the tools to be able to deal with that, also with success as well as the stress and the downtime.
And that's what I love about this book. I mean, it sounds so obvious, all the things that you're saying, but no one has ever really tackled this. You know, as women we hear, well, just don't take it all on. Learn to say no. And then you sort of say, well, meanwhile, back in the real world, the fact is that we're always going to say yes. We're always going to take more on, probably more than we should. But the great thing about your book is that it kind of draws a line in the sand and says that is how it is. But what this does is give you some strategies to deal with that and navigate your way through it. So what are some of those strategies?
Okay, so in chapter 10 there are a whole lot of strategies for people just to get a quick fix. But they belong in chapter 10 because there's a long journey until you get there. But I'm saying to people, if you really need something, read that first, then go back and start. Well, part of it is being able to get perspective when things are really going awry, because my one thing that I'm interested in is people managing their emotional state. There's a very big area around this of learning, but the one thing is, if I'm feeling too emotional, it's like mud in water. I just can't find my reason that quickly because it overtakes, and we don't want to be out of control. And that can happen when we least expect it by an external effect coming in. So if we can find a way to be able to stabilise ourselves in any moment we need to, and then also in the long term, that's where I'm coming from. So sometimes that might be just getting up and having a walk around. Sometimes, it's because you're focusing right down in and you've got so many ideas, so many different contexts you're thinking all at once, so much detail around that, and you just get overwhelmed. And if that happens, you need to be able to stop, and often it's going to the window and looking out at this beautiful blue sky. Sometimes that helps.
Getting perspective,
Getting perspective, that's right. Sometimes it's simple. My daughter will often say to me, she always remembers me telling her she should count to 10, and it still works, having some momentary things you can do to bring relaxation in. So there's a relaxation technique, I think in chapter 11, that I was taught a long time ago, which once you learn, you can pretty much do it in a minute. Use the emotion, don't get rid of it. You need to be able to use that emotion to say, well, this is important to me, but we don't want to be responding at a time where we don't have the clear reason and clear vision. So you need to be able to buy time. So sometimes it's about taking notes in that situation, or asking some questions. Tell me more about that. Now I'm interested in that particular point. Meanwhile, you might be fuming, but I'm interested in that particular point. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So those sorts of things. I think one of the things I see happening, or I hear happening, is that if I'm an extrovert, I'm more likely to talk while I'm think while I'm talking, and talk while I'm thinking. And often, under pressure, that's what extrovert people will do. So if you're an extrovert and a woman, and you have a higher voice as well, and you're in the middle of something where a real strategy meeting or something you're annoyed about, and you start just talking, people will go, well, who's that? So sometimes we just have to remember to stop. And the other side of it, if you're more introverted and more likely to not say what you mean, people might see you as aloof. So it's almost like we need to train ourselves, have some strategies ready for when we're in that situation. The book is really intended to be about the self. It's the intrapersonal communication. The next one will be on communication influence with others, but let's not go to that.
So you're already on to your next book, typical Noelene style.
But this one is about the self-absorption we have, really, and that's why also I've written a fairy tale metaphor. Also, I want people to laugh a bit. Not everybody wants to pick up and read a non-fiction book, but what I've wanted to do is give, 12 nice storyline that goes through the 12 chapters, and then some information to learn about that. And hopefully in those fairy tale characters, you'll be able to recognise yourself or other people that you might connect with, because each of these characters have a particular personality and behavioural style. It's been written specifically for that. And it sort of highlights a bit of the nonsense we go through in the business world. Now, of course, a mother or someone who's in small business or someone who's in a public service or in corporate, there's something there that they can live from that, because we tend to move from one place to another. One of the things I'm concerned about is we're losing great talent out of corporates. Not that it's not great for women to be going into business, because they're starting to do very well, but I don't want to see that loss. And so if you're in a corporate position and you have something that sustains you so that you can build your resilience, so that when you most need your personal power, you have it, that makes all the difference.
And the other great thing I love about your approach and the book itself is that it's not saying to women, in order to succeed, you need to lose your femininity and be more like a man. It's actually about recognising unique female traits and harnessing those to your benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in calling it your emotional edge, that was quite an intentional idea to say, well, you know, you can use your emotion as an edge, or you might feel that you're on the edge of a precipice. You know, it's like, where are you right now? And let's sharpen that edge, so that yes, we need to bring everything we have to leadership and life. You know, let's not bury it, because what happens is we can't stifle who we are. If we do that, that's when we get stressed.
And Noelene, something that you've touched on there, and I know that you address in the book, is female leadership. And this is such a big topic, but all the data that's coming out shows that women are not advancing in the corporate world as much as they should be. In fact, we're going backwards. And one of the recurring themes that's coming out of all of that data is women just not negotiating for themselves.
Yes.
How do you see something like the emotional edge? What role is that playing in negotiation skills?
I think, again, it comes back to finding, if my one thing that I can do is help people find calm in the moment, so that mud in water emotion can settle and a person can live the strategy they've thought about beforehand, and, you know, come back and find that reason in the moment. Also taking a breath before you're responding, you know, often is very, very good. You know, it's interesting, if you think about the leaders that you admire, and I ask my clients this, you know, all the time when they're maybe taking on a big team and a new role and they're a bit nervous, and I'm, you know, how am I going with my team? And I talk to them about the people they admire, and it's almost always the traits that people admire in leaders is that calm confidence. And I say to them, what is the behaviour that tells people that you have calm confidence? And they haven't really thought about that before. Well, it's hesitation. You know, it's not coming back very quickly with things often. It's speaking at an even pace. Sometimes it's passion, but it's like the person has put their words together. So let's have a moment to put your words together. If you're going to be negotiating as well, you know, you might write a script. You're not going to read a script. And we know as speakers too, we're very carefully organise what we're going to talk about, but that means we can speak off the cuff because we really know our stuff. So a few words might change here and there, but our purpose comes through. So being really clear, and I think, you know, particularly here I talk about your emotional compass, and really being very clear about what your outcome is in any given situation. Doing some research around what are the risks, you know, what are the environmental things that might come up in an interview or in a situation at work that might take us off track. And then how can I be flexible around that? Because if you're really aware of what might go wrong and you've thought about some strategies, you won't be caught off guard. So often it's being caught off guard. And sometimes it's actually thinking about that. I'm so proud of young women when they say to me now they're negotiating salaries. They're stepping up to do that. So more people are starting to do it. But I think you need some support from other women, you know, to sort of know what they're doing and be able to say, well, you know, this is what we want to talk about. We want to talk about how we can get strategies around this, and what is our next level going to be. You know, sometimes people do leave the corporate world because they find that they are able to excel more on their own because they can more be the drivers. But I say, you know, that's terrific, and you've got such a lot to give, such a lot to contribute. I'd like to see more stay, because in turn they're going to help people in business as well, because eventually small business will become corporate. If you have resilience and it's in your core, It's a calm, still place that you have within. It doesn't mean you don't get angry, upset or whatever, but you always know that you're okay and that you'll be okay. Because if we get thrown off, you know, our wonderful balance, you know, I hear at the moment there's a lot of doom and gloom around in terms of, you know, the economic climate, and the market's so sensitive. I don't know why we talk it down, but anyway, that's another story. But there's this sort of monotone drone that goes on about, you know, it's fashionable to say, oh, things are tough at the moment. And I appreciate lots of people are going through tough times. We're all feeling some sort of financial pressures. But we are not going to get there without leadership. We're in our communities, in our homes, you know, and in the corporate world, in business, we need to be stepping up saying, what can we do in this environment? How can we prepare ourselves for when things turn around? And it may be very different to the scenario we're used to in the past, but if we get to the stage where every day we're saying everything's terrible, and I'm not saying go to the other side in positive thinking either, because that's not useful to say there's nothing wrong, but if we have resilience, we can have hope, because if we get to a stage where we fear enough, we let fear in, we get helpless and hopeless, and eventually we start feeling worthless and our self-esteem plummets. That's not going to take us anywhere, you know. Women often lead their families out of, you know, any situation. And, you know, I'm not talking about crisis either, because in crisis people tend to step up. I'm talking about the inertia of just the ongoing day-by-day drudgery that seems to happen when we don't ask ourselves, well, what is it today that we can do toward where we want to go?
So women are, I think, more emotionally resilient than they give themselves credit for. So that's the other great thing about the book, is that it's actually recognising that resilience and the role that it plays. Yeah. Noelene, I know that this book is going to do very well. Congratulations. It's a fantastic read, and thanks for talking to us today.
Can I just say before we close that one of the wonderful things about this book, it's got this amazing young woman has done the foreword. So I'd like to thank you, Amanda, for doing the foreword in my book. I feel quite privileged to have you have done that. And I'm just blown away by the response I've had so far. I want to set up communities of women. I want to, you know, set up like book clubs, and I'll certainly be writing some programs to back the book up so people can learn more if they wish.
That's great. So head to the website for more information. Your Emotional Edge available at emotionalresilience.com.au.